这个对，回复他一下，如果有人回复的话，如果我们需要回复的啊，链接发给我们，好吧？那就这个是 double，我不知道是谁，反正那你们就发给他吧，这个我都不知道链接，就得他们，你看慢慢在上，我想等一等，我估计可能大家都在上，对吧？行，我们说这个对，回复他一下，如果有人回复的话，如果我们需要回复的。啊，链接发给我们，好吧？那就这个是 double，我不知道是谁，反正那你们就发给他吧，这个我都不知道链接。对，好的，我看见他们，谢谢。我看见了，已经有了。啊，所以有人问了嘛，是说人是介绍美国的，哎呀，这个怎么办呢？这个就是说，看来我得有人专门回答这个，因为那个张医师没有时间回答，对吧？你肯定没有时间去回答这些东西，所以我估计我得找个人回答这个，我估计我得可能上面写，而且好像都得写中文，我看大家好像都是用中文来讲，这些家长孩子可能他们正在登录呢，让他们正在登录，我再看一看啊。已经都在开始上，我看了他那个在群里在讲，其实我这群里有将近400人呢，但是可能有的人他已经上线了，对，他们应该能看到我们，但是他们可能我们看不了他们，因为他都给后台都给他屏蔽了。看到我们了吗？我问问你妈妈。OK， 问一下，这期。美国大学，这东西还真的不是特别会那什么呢。OK， 等一下，我先把这个写一下，你知道吧？嘿，大家好，今天呢非常高兴呢能在这里呢邀请到呢张一驰同学，因为我想大家可能也在这个就是屏幕上也能看到，就是我们今天呢讲的是关于呢美国的这种就是美国的北医联读，另外呢它是 MBA 和 MD， 就是说读商学院和那个医学院的这种分享，而那个张一驰同学的一些简历呢，我们其实在前边呢也大概的给大家介绍了一下，就是说呢他呢是北京市中，是我们国内的孩子。当然了，他高中在美国读的高中，高中读完以后呢，在美国考进了这个北医联读。这个他在国内上学的时候就已经是北京市中的团委的书记，就属于是有 leadership 有这种领导力的一个孩子。但是呢，他到了美国以后呢，真的是很不容易，因为北医联读其实录取是非常少的。在他那一届呢，杜兰的北医联读只录取了4名学生，他能够成为唯一一个就是说中国国籍的北医联读生。其实很多人不了解北医联读，但是因为我们的孩子呢，我的孩子本身也是北医联读，所以我们知道这个录取是非常难度非常大的，一般都是针对于美国本土的学生。所以呢，我们就是今天呢，想让那个张一驰呢，正好借助于这个爱维教育这个平台，因为我们以前呢其实都是在那个微信上这种用语音是非常不方便的，通过这个 Zoom 的这种形式第一次尝试。然后呢，这个时间呢，我们正常是1个小时，但是如果这个问题没有回答完，或者说有些听众呢，就是或者是同学呢，有些东西需要再继续的话呢，我们也可以延长半个小时，这是说的这个时间。当然了，首先我们非常感谢呢张一驰同学能够在百忙之中，因为大家不了解这种就是商学院和医学院同时来读的是多么的艰苦，因为读个医学院就已经很难了，在北美。所以呢，我们也非常感谢他能够呢找出这个宝贵的时间来跟我们大家进行分享，而且呢，大家呢可以留言，在有可能的情况下呢，我也可以呢跟大家呢。就是说，有这个可能，就是说在同时回答你的问题。当然了，张一驰可能来不及去回答，因为他可能到最后的时候，他把自己的事情说完以后，就是回答的这些话题回答完以后，他可能才能回答大家。所以呢，有时候大家如果不是特别着急的，稍微等一等，等到他基本上把他需要讲的东西讲完以后，然后呢，他再提供给大家，就是说这个时间让大家来问问题，好吧？然后呢，我们呢就把现在这个话语权呢交给这个张一驰同学，然后我们呢 由衷的欢迎他能够加入到我们这个就是所有名校的青少年的一个分享活动，好吧？谢谢大家。
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and good morning to those that are in China right now. My name is Ichi, and I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about my experiences in the BSMD program. So I guess I'll start off by talking a couple minutes just about myself in general, just to give you a general idea of the path that I took from high school onwards. So many of you know, and I think Dr. Jin mentioned, I went to high school here in the States, in Maryland. So I went to a public high school, and it was one of the better public high schools in Maryland, and I really enjoyed it there. In high school, I wasn't really a very STEM student. I wouldn't call myself like science oriented at all, because at the time I was also very interested in history and the humanities in general. So I wasn't completely sure of my path. But then later on, as we got to junior year and senior year, and we got to listen to more and more talks about career paths, I realized that medicine, because it's a special place. Medicine is basically the intercept of perfect intercept of the humanities as well as the sciences, right? So you're using the skills and knowledge that of the sciences, but then your ultimate goal is to treat people and connect with people. So I just thought that from then on, I was pretty committed to studying medicine. And so how I started to approach that was because I'm an international student, and right now I know a lot of the students here are Canadian, and you would also count as international students in the States if that's your goal, ultimate goal, is to go to a medical school in the States. It's a very competitive environment, and that's putting it quite lightly, because according to the data that when I applied, which was back in 2016, that's when I applied to undergrad as well as medical school. I think the total number of international students that got into U.S. medical schools was around 200 to 300, somewhere in that range, and that's all the countries in the world combined, right? And Canada has a unique advantage in the sense that half of those 300 students, let's just say, maybe around 150 were Canadians, and the other half were basically from all over the world, right? So it's a very competitive environment, because if you think about it as a class, right, a 300 person class consisted of everyone across the world. That's very hard to get into. So you got to start planning early. So from high school, what I did in terms of preparation was that I did a lot of community service. I didn't necessarily orient that towards clinical volunteering per se. I did do some volunteer work in the hospitals, but a lot of the times it was also just like environmental work. And as well, I served on the international club at my school, which was the biggest club in the school, and I also was holding a leadership position there. So really, my volunteering activities were pretty eclectic, and they weren't just oriented very clinically back then, because they don't expect a high school student to already be able to write clinical research papers. I mean, that's just not realistic. So as long as you have the commitment, they see the commitment that you have towards your community, then they know that you probably are qualified to head into the medical field, right? In terms of other things that I did, was that I made sure that I took as many AP classes as possible. For the Canadian students here, you guys probably would be more familiar with the IB system. I'm not sure, actually. Maybe you guys are familiar with the AP system. But anyway, you guys have definitely heard of them. And they're basically like these tests that you take during your senior year of high school. And you try to do the best on them, because these courses can qualify you for college credit, right? So and it turns out that these were very crucial later on when I applied. I didn't know back then, but I just knew, like, if I had as many AP credits as possible, then I would bring in like a lot of high school credits into college, which is already good. I didn't necessarily know that they would help me out so much later on, which I'll explain. So that was high school. And then because I'm an international student, and I know that applying through the normal process of going into US medical schools would be extraordinarily difficult. That's when my parents and we started looking into the alternative paths. So any paths that may guarantee your admission to medical school, right? And that's when we stumbled upon these what you call BSMD programs, right? So Bachelor's of Science Medical Doctor, like it's a continuum, right? So and because these programs are normally pretty small and people don't really hear about them that much, but so you have to do a lot of research. I think now there's more of them, but back then we only looked at about maybe a dozen programs across the country, and that was about it. So I think the schools that do have the program that I know currently are my school, which is the Tulane University School of Medicine. I know that Baylor in Texas has one for sure. Rochester in New York has one. Brown in Rhode Island has one. Pretty sure I'm pretty sure Michigan has one as well. There was a dozen schools that had it, but they're all very, very competitive. So, and they have specific requirements for entering. So, you know, obviously the one I'm most familiar with is the Tulane one because that's the one I ended up going with. And one of the requirements was that you had to bring in at least 20 AP credits, right? 20 AP credits. So what does that mean? Normally we say 3 credits is about like one class, right? So that's about, you need to bring in about 5 to 6 AP classes worth of credits, right? So if you don't have that accumulated in high school, your chances are going to be very slim, right? And the other very harsh requirement, I would say, is that they required your AP biology, specifically that score, to be the highest score, which is in the AP scale, it's 5. And if you took IB biology, which some of you may have, you need the highest score as well, which is I think 7 for you guys. So that is very hard because if you look at the statistics for biology, for AP or IB biology, the people that can achieve that top score are, I would say, less than 10% for both of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the recent years, I haven't looked at the data for the previous 2 years, but I'm pretty sure it's close to that. So that was one of the hard parts. Because of that as a requirement, the number of people that have these prerequisites for the program are already pretty sparse, and the people that do apply then are really competitive. So when I then got to Tulane, so it was move-in week, basically first week of freshman year, that's when Tulane has the interviews for this BSMD program. And at the time, before the interview started, they had around 10 of us, I think 8 of us, go into a meeting, and they told us about the requirements and had us like double check all of our credentials and see that if we are really, we can only continue through the interviews if we really qualified for the program. And so we had to double check with them and everything. And then the interviews were basically set for the second Thursday of freshman year. So, and that's the other hard part about getting into these programs is that basically we were 18 at the time. We were fresh out of high school, right? So these are some high school kids that are going to be put in a high pressure interview on the second week of your college career, right? So that's a lot of pressure looking back. And I was obviously very nervous, as was everybody else. And so the interview format, they didn't tell us because they wanted everything to be, very spontaneous, and they wanted to see your real reaction towards things. And so when I entered the room, and I guess there's one more caveat before this. So they actually had us schedule our own times for the interviews. And so I thought of like the best strategy was that I should go first, because if any of you study psychology, you know about the primacy effect and the recency effect. So for these interviews, if they allow you to choose the interview time, preferentially you want to have either the first slot or the last slot, right? Because those two would probably leave your interviewers with the best impression, just psychologically speaking. So so I snatched up the first slot and I got it. So that was pretty lucky. So when I went into the room, it turns out that there were about 14 people in the room, and I was thoroughly shocked. I entered the room and I was I was like, wow, like this looks like I'm giving a talk to a room full of people rather than an interview. And you can imagine that's a lot of pressure on a high school student like myself. So when I got in there, they started asking me a lot of personal questions that I wrote regarding my application. So these BSMD interviews, I'm not sure about how other schools do it, but at Tulane at least, it's very personal because here's the thing. They're basically committing you to a program that lasts 8 years or 7 years in my circumstance. That's a long time. They want to make sure that you're a good fit for the program, right? So they're not going to ask you like generic questions that you see for like general college admission interviews. These are going to be very specific and tailored towards the your fitness towards the program, right? So for just to give one quick example, I wrote about in my application that one of my hobbies was building personal computers, building PCs. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically I can assemble all the parts of a computer from their individual components and connect them via circuits together and make it a functioning computer, right? That's just a random hobby that I wrote about. But they asked me about that specifically, and they asked me how that will help me with my career in medicine. So basically, my answer, I had to come up with an answer on the spot, right? I didn't really have that much time. So what I thought about was that I said, basically, I made analogies about how each of the computer components were basically like organs in the human body. And I explained to them how the CPU is basically like the brain, right? And then the power bank is essentially like your heart. It's pumping electricity throughout the system. Basically, like those analogies to make them understand, okay, how the computer works and how that's why we connect them together in a specific order, right? So, and they really like that answer. So that's just one example of how they make the interview very specific and personal. So, and then after I got in the program, they basically announced the results right after the interview. So I interviewed around 1 p.m. For Tulane, they announced at 4 p.m. Who the applicants that got in were. So it was quite the wait for those 3 hours. But so after I got in, they immediately the academic advisors worked with me to change my schedule up because I think some of you asked in your questions as well regarding how I was able to complete my undergrad coursework, which is normally 4 years for any given major. I completed it in 2 years, and it sounds very hard. And looking back, I want to say it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And again, that loops back to what I mentioned earlier about the AP credits. So I ended up bringing in 27 credits, right? 27 credits. And for my program, my undergraduate major, which was cell molecular biology, only required 90 credits to graduate undergrad, right? So 90 minus 27, that's 63, right? So I had to take 63 credits over 4 semesters, which is 2 years, which if you think about it is really not that bad. So, but the prerequisite to that is that you have to bring in a lot of high school credits, right? So basically that's why the AP credits and the IB credits that you have in high school are actually very crucial if you want to go for these BSMD programs. So let me just before I start answering the questions that you submitted in advance, let me just quickly go through my my program structure so that you guys know. So the first 2 years, as I just mentioned, are going to be completing your undergrad coursework, which for me was a major in cell and molecular biology. And then you basically didn't have that much time to do anything else because, I mean, you're basically taking credits that are, when you're a freshman, you're taking the credits for your sophomore year. And then when you're a sophomore, you're taking junior and senior credits. It's a lot of hard courses, right? So you're not going to have that much time to take anything else. That's one of the downsides of the program, is that if you're a person that likes to explore beyond your core curriculum, unfortunately, these programs, their curriculums are arranged in a pretty tight fashion that you can't really do that. But I was able to, because of the fact that I brought in so many AP credits, I was able to sneak in a psychology minor in the end. So I did take a couple psychology classes and I was able to do a minor in that. But that's about the maximum that you can do. There's no way you can double major with this. So that's one of the limitations. If you're a person that really wants to double major, this is not for you. Okay. I just got to be honest with that, because some people definitely they're too idealistic about the time management in this. It is a very tough program. And so these are the first 2 years. And then the third year in my program is actually very special. It's an entire year of community service. So my program, which is called the Tulane Accelerated Physicians Training Program, it was created after the disaster that was Hurricane Katrina. That hit New Orleans back in the, so I don't know, if you're not from the States, you probably don't know, but this was back in 2005 where it hit. And then after which donations helped Tulane get back on its feet. And to give back to the community, Tulane created this program. And then so as the participants of this program, we have to give back to the community by serving an entire year for the community, right? And so what I did for this community service year, so you're required to basically work 40-hour weeks, right, as a volunteer. So I split my time between three things. First, I worked with a nonprofit called A's and Aces, which is a local local organization that serves one of the poorest communities around here and teaches their children tennis, right? So these kids, they might not be the brightest academically, but this way, if they can have their tennis skills honed by the time they get to high school, maybe they can get a Division II or Division I even scholarship to college, right? And this helps them a lot. So that's the first thing I did. I served as a tennis coach. Second thing I did was that I taught Chinese at the local Chinese academy, the New Orleans Chinese Academy. And I basically taught two courses. I taught AP Chinese. Again, that's one of the favorite courses over there for the high school students. And then I also taught some ancient poetry, ancient Chinese poetry. That's always been an interest of mine. And I was very happy to do that. It was a very interesting course that I taught. And then the third thing that I did was I was very into organic chemistry. I think if I didn't go into medicine, honestly, I would probably go for organic chemistry. For those of you that haven't taken it, you might know that it's a pretty notorious course in college that's known as a weed out course. So a lot of people get filtered out. If they want to go to medical school, but you can't get a good grade in organic chemistry, you basically are I don't want to say doomed, but you're pretty disadvantaged in that regard. So that's the third thing I did. I taught organic chemistry for the school and as a teaching assistant. So after that year, so that's the first 3 years of the program. The fourth year, you finally get to enter medical school. And I just completed the first year of medical school about a month ago. And I'll talk about that later, but that's where you basically enter the normal medical school curriculum. And I'll talk about my experiences in the MBA program as well later onwards, because I think some of you asked about it in your questions. So with that being said, I'll start to answer some of the questions that you all submitted in advance. And I think the first question that I got was, what did I do to prepare in high school? So I think I talked about that pretty extensively already, I want to say. So again, the first key thing is to make sure you have enough AP or IB credit hours, right? A lot of BSMD programs require that. And not only do you want the credit, you also want to have a good grade, because some of them have pretty high standards regarding the grades, right? And second of all is community service, because you are entering medicine. You're trying to enter a field that is serving other people. So they want to see that you have taken an active interest in that. Okay. So, and a lot of people are like, ask me, okay, do you do a lot of research in high school? And my answer to that is, no, I didn't do any research in high school, because if somebody told you, oh, I have extensive clinical research experience as a high schooler, like I would be very skeptical towards that, because at that point you don't have any credentials or knowledge that can help you do that. So what is your role in that research? Like there is not much that I can see that you can do. So I wouldn't worry too much about publishing papers in high school yet. Maybe worry about that in undergrad, but definitely not high school. Okay, so the second question that I see is, during the interview, how did you basically make it a successful interview? So specifically towards the BSMD applicants in this group, I would say that the most important aspect that you want to show to the interviewers during your BSMD interview is you want to show that you can take on the responsibility, and you want to make sure that they know that you're mature enough to take on the commitment, right? Because it's a long commitment. It's a 7 or 8 year commitment, right? And they want to know that, okay, this guy has understands what this program entails entirely and is willing to give his or her 100%, right? That's basically what they want to know, because they don't want to see people dropping out in the middle of the program, right? Because that would look bad for them, because that means they put trust in you, and then you come around and then you betray that trust. So that you want to basically show them that I'm 100% committed, I'm ready to study medicine, and I will give it my all, right? So that's basically the most important part in terms of the BSMD interview. Otherwise, I would say whatever personal details you put into your application, make sure you can explain them, right? So let's say you're not really good at computer. Just an example. Let's say you're not really good at computer programming, but you say, okay, my hobby is I program all the time and blah blah blah, right? Then if they really ask you about it and they ask you to give a pretty in-depth talk about it, and you can't do that, that looks really bad, right? So only put things that you've really done, right, in your on your resume for the end your application. So okay, so the third question I see is that what's the biggest challenge to getting in a US BSMD program as an international student? Okay, so very good question. The first and the most important one is to make sure they take international students, actually. So Tulane was one of the ones that I had to reach out to the medical school dean to make sure. Like, I personally emailed him and I said, okay, do you guys take international students? And he said yes. And I said, is there a different standard for interviewing us, or is there different? Do you hold us to a higher standard at all in investing the candidates? He said no. As long as you have the prerequisites, we treat you like domestic students. I said, great, okay, that's great, because Tulane, that's a great attitude. But some of the schools won't even take international students. And the second biggest thing for is that as an international student, you want to show them that you are basically committed to being like here to study for that 7-8 year period, right? It's about that commitment. They want to know that you're ready to take on that commitment. So you want to make sure you show your preparedness, and that preparedness is not only in terms of like mental stability, emotional stability, but also very importantly, financial stability. That's a huge thing. They will ask you for your financial proof as an international student to pay for all 8 years of those tuitions. So, and it is a hefty, so US medical schools are very expensive, right? So that is a very hefty fee that you have to pay. But again, the medical school dean at Tulane, Dr. Mark Kahn, so he's calculated the value of a US MD degree, and as of 2017, it was worth around 1.75 million US dollars on average. So it's a worthy investment. Okay, so the fourth question is, how did I complete 4 years of undergrad in 2 years? I think I answered that already while I was introducing myself. The AP credits from high school certainly helped out a lot there. And then the rest of the credits, you just have to, they're hard, but you can do it, because if you brought in those high school credits, you're averaging about 17, 18 credits a semester, right? And if you're really studious, you should be able to handle that. And the next question is, why would I choose to go teach AP Chinese? Okay, so that interesting question. Yeah. So when I first went to the Chinese school to get interviewed for the position, for the volunteering teacher position, I said that I wanted to teach my own course, which was the ancient Chinese poetry, right? And they said, yes, you can do that, but as an elective. To be a teacher here, you need to be able to teach something that's a staple. And right now, one of our openings is that we need somebody to teach AP Chinese because the previous teacher had just left. So it's not necessarily that I chose to teach AP Chinese, it's that I just happened to go interview there, and I offered basically my services, and they saw that I had enough skill, because I did go to I did go to public schools in China up all the way up until middle school, right? So I have a pretty good foundation, and AP Chinese is around I would say around high elementary school level in China, right? So I have more than proficient enough Chinese to teach that. So that's why I did that. On to the next question, which is, why do you think they chose you for the BSMD program? Okay, so good question. I think I explained it already. They were looking for some like they're all high schoolers, right? All the applicants were high schoolers, but they're looking for people that they can trust and commit for 8 years, right? So again, you need to show that you're ready for that, right? You can't. So basically, in an interview, they're trying. Sometimes they're intentionally picking at you a little bit, just to make sure that you have the adaptive abilities, right? So they want to make sure that you're not going to completely crumble under pressure, because it is a lot of pressure, right? And you want to make sure that they want to make sure that you're completely prepared, completely committed, right? Before they admit you to such a large commitment. So that's honestly the most important thing, I think. Okay, so next question is, let's see. Oh, how many AP credits did you have in high school, and what do you think about your SAT scores and how they affected your application? So I already talked about my AP credits. So I brought in 27 credits. So that's quite a lot. I would say that is a lot. You certainly don't need that much. I would say if you have about like 20, you should be good. But you know, the more the merrier. And AP credits, they really do help for BSMD. A lot of people say for normal college applications, they're already they're not as important anymore. But I think for BSMD, they are pretty crucial. Regarding SAT scores, so my SAT score was certainly not top notch. It wasn't it like you would not look at it and say like, wow, like what an amazing score. It was just like an okay score, right? So and here's the thing, like these days, I don't know, there's a new scoring system. It's in the 1600 scale now. When I took it, it was back in the 2400 scale. So again, I'm not sure how the score variations go now, but I would say SAT scores, you want to be in the range where they will consider you. You don't want to be below like, you know, a cutoff range, but beyond that, right? Beyond like after your score is good enough for them to consider you, what you really want to do is stand out in your essays and your interviews, right? I think that's more important than like getting like a 2400 or in this case a 1600 on your SAT, right? Because a lot of people have 1600. Like when I first got to Tulane, both of my roommates, right, they had nearly perfect SATs, right? But neither got into their like top school. So I think it has a lot to do with also your applications as well as your interviews. So as long as your SAT score is all right, I would say like, you know, yeah, focus on other stuff. Let's see. So next question is, why did I decide to study MBA in the same time as medical school? So, okay, so this comes into my other part of the program, which is, so I'm in the MD MBA combined program. So basically, the Tulane A.B. Freeman School of Business started to offer this program in conjunction with the medical school, I think a couple years back, maybe like 5 or 6 years back. And this is because if you notice that basically medicine, a lot of the times, like especially where it pertains to private practice in the United States as well as Canada, really is a business, right? Anything's a business. So, and many medical doctors, I mean, they're very knowledgeable, but they're knowledgeable in their respective field of medicine and not really the business aspects of it. They don't know how to manage people. They don't know really how to like organize you know, and run a clinic so that it's the max efficiency. And at the time, to motivate us for this program, they actually said that anyone who applied can take the GMAT, which is the business school entrance exam, equivalent to the MCAT, which is the medical school admissions exam. They told us we could take that test and submit our scores in an attempt to get a scholarship, right? They said they would determine the scholarship amount based on how many other people took the GMAT and what they got. So I was like, okay, well, I'm interested in business, right? It's always been pretty fascinating for me. And I just said, okay, well, if we can fit it in the 4 years of medical school and we're not going to take any extra time per se, then why not, right? So I took the GMAT and I actually did pretty well on it. So, and I got the full scholarship for the MBA. So I didn't have to pay for the MBA program at all. And um, that's basically how I decided to go. And uh, currently, even in the summers, so the trade-off again is in the summers of your medical school year 1 and year 2, you're going to have to take MBA courses, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to start taking classes again tomorrow when it's Monday again, right? I'm taking classes like 6 to 9 hours every day. It is a lot, but uh, if you follow through with the curriculum, right, it doesn't really interfere with your medical school curriculum during the semesters. Where it is heavy is the summers, and that's what I'm doing right now, is all business classes. And so far it's been very interesting, and you definitely learn on, like, take on a different perspective regarding things. And later on, when you're like, let's say you want to try to manage a hospital or your own clinic, anything of that sort, you're going to be at a more competent position, right? So and at this age, anything in America is run like a business, right? So you want to have that basic understanding. So that's why I decided to take on the MBA program. Okay, so the next question, which is very closely related, is how many classes do I have to take in business school when I'm concurrent with the medical school curriculum? So very good question. So since I just finished my first year of medical school, what I can tell you guys is, so the fall of your first year of medical school in the US, that's normally the anatomy course, and it's a very heavy loaded course. So I didn't have to take any business courses that semester. But then starting in the spring, so the spring of my first year in medical school, I had to take 2 business courses, right? And then in the summer, which is the summer before medical school, as well as this summer, which is the summer of after your first year of medical school, I have to take 5 classes in each summer, right? So that's 10 classes total taken in the summers, and that's where the bulk of the courses are for the MBA program. And otherwise, you're in your normal medical school curriculum, you're just taking maybe 1 or 2 business courses at night that doesn't interfere with your medical school curriculum in the daytime. You will have to take more time to do the assignments, but that's it's much, I would say it's much easier than medical school, right? So in general, so business school is much easier, and they don't necessarily, the business school professors also understand, and they're not trying to put extra workload on you because they know you're medical students. So that helps too. Okay, so moving on to the next question, which is how I got a high score in, it says, the questions asked how I got a high score in GRE. I didn't take the GRE, I took the GMAT. So GRE is for other general graduate schools. GMAT is for business school. So for the GMAT, I mean, for people that have gone through the studying process for the medical school exam, which is called MCAT, that is going to be much more extensive than the GMAT. So if you studied enough for the MCAT, you are pretty much good to go for the GMAT, other than getting familiarized with the format of it. Because I think from the moment I was notified that I could take the GMAT for the scholarship to me actually taking the exam, it was about 2 weeks. So I studied for the GMAT maybe maximum of about 2 weeks, and I studied every day for maybe like 2 or 3 hours each. That's about it, because I didn't feel like I needed much more, because I felt well prepared, because the MCAT is just a more difficult exam, and I already studied for that, right? So okay, so the next question is, after you graduate medical school, can you stay in the States to be a doctor, and can you get a green card? Good question. So as international students, I mean, so there's 2 options after medical school, right? So you're going to have to go through residency, which is the medical training after your medical school. And if you are very, very good and the program really wants you, they'll give you a work visa, which is the H-1B. And after that, you can go through the normal process of getting a green card. But most programs actually right now, like current policies indicate that they are not doing that. Instead, they will give you what you call the J-1 visa, which is like a visiting scholars visa. And for that, you actually have, so after your medical residence, you have to go back to your home country for 2 years before returning to the US again. So that's the only hiccup in that regard. But after that, after the 2 years of being in your own home country after residency, you can I can't say it's easy to find a job, but as a doctor, I mean, you're pretty much needed everywhere anyway. So it wouldn't be too difficult, I imagine, to find a job here, and you can maybe get a work visa that way. The next question is, so when I went to high school in the States, what was my biggest challenge, and what do you think what advice do I have for the students that are coming to the States for high school? Okay, so for high school, I would say the biggest thing is to keep your mind like open, right, towards things, right, and make some friends, right. So that's I wouldn't worry too much. So again, maybe it's just my experience. I wouldn't worry too much academically, because if you're coming from a Chinese public education, academics are not your worries, right? Out here, when you're out here for high school, just make sure you keep an open mind and you're friendly to everybody, and try to get a couple friends, and then you'll be part of the community pretty quick, I would say, most of the time. It depends on the school. Again, I went to a public American high school, and I know that private American high schools tend to have a different culture. So that could be a difference, but that's about the advice that I would have. Okay, next question is, okay, so this is basically about how much more challenging it is for international students to get a residency match in the US. Okay, so here's the thing. There's two populations here, right? There's international students that went to international medical schools, and there's international students that went to American medical schools that are seeking match in the US residency. And for the former group, which is the one that went to international medical schools, it's very hard. It's very hard. Um, uh, you have to be like top of the class, right? Because there's just simply not enough residency spots for you, right? And typically the people that can come here are definitely like very, very, very high achievers. For international students that went to American medical schools, it's a different story. Because you're considered an American medical graduate, most of the residency programs will actually see you as a semi-domestic, right? So they like you a lot more, and they'll tend to want to take you on. So again, the key difference here is which type of visa you can get, whether it's the H-1B, which is the work visa, which you can go for the green card process right away, or you go for the J-1 visa, which is a little bit more circuitous, and can take a longer time, right? So you can probably get into medical residency match, like as an American medical graduate, but it's which type of visa that you get is the question. So okay, so next question is, what preparations do you have to do in high school if you want to go to a BSMD program? I think I already talked about that enough. AP credits, volunteering, I think I mentioned that already. So on to the next question. A lot of students are choosing to study medicine. What do you think is the career outlook? I think I mean, based on what I'm hearing from talks from current doctors here at Tulane, it's pretty good actually. I think as a doctor in the U.S., you're not like you're always going to have a pretty high compensation, even if you're working in like a pretty crowded city like New York City, where you have a lot of competition. You're still going to have a nice income. It's very well compensated, and you're very well respected. So, and I think here's the thing. For people that choose medicine, a lot of the times it's also about fulfilling your own like curiousness, right? Curiosity, right? So for people that study medicine, you should really have a passion towards it, right? If you're doing medicine purely for the career outlook, then I wouldn't recommend doing it, right? Because it's a lot of work, like from studying, like up until like working, it's long hours and everything. And if you're not internally passionate about it, I wouldn't recommend it, right? But if you are, I would say it's pretty great, and you get good compensation and people do respect you. So yeah, that's that. Next question, why did I choose Tulane? Okay, so good question. So I was actually in the final step of my college applications, I was actually choosing between Tulane and the University of Michigan, which I assume some of you have heard of. So and Tulane stood out to me because I didn't even ask for a scholarship at Tulane, and they offered me a half tuition scholarship for undergrad, just straight up. They said, please come here, we'll give you a half scholarship. I didn't even ask for it. And Michigan also gave me a scholarship, but it was much less, right? So at that point, I think it and also like I don't like places that are too cold, and Michigan is notorious for being always in winter. So yeah, coming to New Orleans, it's in the south. It gets very hot sometimes, but it certainly doesn't get cold. So that's nice. And that's partially the reason I chose Tulane. And Tulane's very open towards international students, very accepting, and that's always very it makes me feel very warm because of that, because it is one of the few schools that are very unbiased towards international students in terms of medical school admissions. Okay, so next question. How do I manage my time while studying for both medical school and MBA? So yeah, so this is it's difficult. It's difficult. So during the semester, it certainly can get a little hectic, especially near exam times. And you have medical school exams and business school exams at the same week, then it gets really hectic. But you basically have to block off your times. So let's say you just organize your day where it's so daytime, let's say if you get up at like 8 a.m. up until 5 p.m., it's just all medical school work. Like you're going to get focused on that. You're not even going to think about business school, right? You're not going to think about it at all because it'll distract you. You're just do your best with medical school work. And then from 5 p.m. onwards to whenever you sleep, which for me is about typically midnight, that's all business school, right? For those exam weeks. And then for business, so the biggest difference between studying for business school and medical school is that medical school is a lot of memorizing, a lot more memorizing. And I use this program called Anki. So I'm sure some of you heard of it. If you study for the MCAT, it's like this flashcard program that helps you keep on track regarding like your learning objectives. And if you do enough like reviewing flashcards every day, the medical school material will stick to you pretty nicely, right? Because it's a lot of memorization. The business school stuff requires more analyzing, like so it's not as much memorization. So it's a different style. Okay, so the next question is, does Tulane provide help for like your future career opportunities? Like what kind of assistance do they provide you? So Tulane is again, it's for those of you that don't know, it's located in New Orleans, and that's in the southern state of Louisiana. So Tulane, it's not a big national name of a school, but it's pretty well known in the American South. So there's a lot of alumni in the South for Tulane. So if you want to get employment later after you graduate Tulane in Southern America, you can expect to get help from a lot of alumni in pretty much any field, right? So it's more difficult in the North to find connections because it's nothing like the Ivy Leagues, right? You can find connections pretty much all throughout the country. Tulane is not that, but it's definitely pretty prominent in the South. And if that's where you want to stay, let's say you want to stay in like Texas or like or Louisiana or Georgia, these states, then you can find plenty of connections there. So the next question is, what are the strong majors, if you will, at Tulane? Okay, so I would say traditionally, so Tulane actually started out as a medical college back in 1834. And Tulane was really well known for its medical school back in the early 1900s, when there was this very prominent doctor. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon. His name is Dr. Michael DeBakey, and he was the inventor of the DeBakey forceps for cardiac, for cardiac vessels, right? So cardiac vessels are like heart vessels. They're very delicate, right? So when you clamp them, you don't want to damage the vessel, right? So he developed this special like type of forceps where you could clamp the cardiac vessels without damaging them, right? So he's really famous for that. So again, so Tulane's pretty famous for its medical school. The architecture school is also pretty old, and it's very well known in the South. And then recently, the business school has gotten a lot more investment as well as donations, so it's becoming more competitive. But there's still some distance towards the traditionally strong business schools, but a lot more. You can see that a lot more changes are coming to the business school, and they recently built two brand new like buildings on campus for the business school, and they're really nice. The facilities are really nice. So yeah, I would say for Tulane, the strong majors that I can tell right now are medicine, architecture, business, and maybe I've heard that the liberal arts school is pretty good too, but I can't tell as to, because I'm not familiar with it. I can't say how well the career outlook is for that. So okay, moving on. What am I most satisfied with, and what am I most unsatisfied with at school? So okay, so let's talk about the first one first. So the first one is definitely, so medical school. It's very interesting. That's the coolest thing for me, right? So all the things that I'm learning about, very relevant and very just if you have a passion towards medicine and like towards exploring like the human body, and it's great, because every class you're learning something new and you're learning something interesting, and you feel like you're doing something that will help you out in the future, and that just gives you motivation, right? So that's the most important thing, and I guess that's where most of my motivation comes from, is just getting to learn these very cool, interesting things every day. The most so I guess my biggest complaint would be how the curriculum is organized. Sometimes can be a little bit confusing, and this might be a school problem. This is not like a medicine problem in general. But sometimes the curriculum is not organized in a very intuitive manner, in the sense that like you can't, like in certain units where you expect to encounter certain topics that you want to study for, the emphasis is not exactly what you think it is, and it's not as intuitive. And I can't really specify further, because you need to really be in the program to know. But I think curriculums are meant to change and shift around, and they're meant to get better. So we as medical students, we fill out surveys all the time, and that's to provide feedback for future classes, right? So I imagine the curriculum problems will probably improve with time, and I'm not terribly worried about it. Currently, my biggest dissatisfaction is that some business classes are making us do a lot of busy work. Like we're not necessarily learning anything. We're just having to do these like crunching numbers, things that even like if we do become managers like of a hospital and clinic, we can just hire accountants to do, right? So I think for us, if we understand the concepts behind these calculations, it should be enough. And they're just making us do the very specific number crunching, and that's I don't know what the purpose for that entirely is. I guess that's just a minor complaint, but yeah. So that would be my biggest complaint for now. So with that being said, are there any other questions that have been submitted during the talk, Dr. Jin?
I see there is some people ask you about what you want to, just a moment, in your opinion, which is better, AP or IB? You know, IB program.
I would say it doesn't really matter as long as you get top scores in like whichever one you're taking. I think most colleges now recognize both, and they translate both of these course credits into their college course credits. So it doesn't matter. But what matters again is especially for the medically related courses like biology or chemistry, you want to get as high as you can, right, on those. So any other questions?
Yeah, there's somebody asked, does Tulane offer scholarship? I think you talk about it a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Tulane, yeah, Tulane definitely offers scholarship, and especially if so. I think you can. So I didn't apply for scholarships, and I got one, right? So if you apply for scholarships, you'll probably have a better chance even. So yeah.
Also, some people also said you should go to Harvard. So you go to Tulane is so, like disappointed. I said, no, you can explain that.
You mean Harvard?
Yeah, they think you should go Harvard.
Oh, so that's, I mean, the thing is, I think in terms of medical schools, like, okay, this is going to cause a lot of controversy. I don't think there's necessarily a super large gap in terms of medical school education in the United States, but where there is a significant difference is residency training. So let's say you went to just like a normal medical school, and if that's fine. If you can get into one of the top residency programs, you're still in a very competitive position, right? So I don't think it matters as much as people think. So and I just opened the chat. I think I see a couple more questions. Can you get a scholarship by being really good in a sports team? I'm not sure. I was never like a athlete in college, so I wouldn't know about that. And I imagine that doesn't really like getting a sports scholarship would be a separate path to going into the BSMD program. So I'm not sure. And here's another question: what's a good GPA? Again, the higher the better, right? But I would say, so if you can look up data on the if you want to go to medical school, you probably I would say personally, if you want a good chance to get into the good medical schools, you want to at least have a 3.6 or 3.7 or above, right? That's the ideal. And you want to have like, other things that complement that GPA, right? Not just your GPA being good. And then another question I see: how difficult is IB classes compared to AP classes? I can't really tell you because I never went through an IB course. So I can only tell you that the AP classes compared to the normal classes in high school are significantly like more difficult. But again, they are the ones that provide you with the college credit. So if you really want the college credit, you don't have a choice. You have to go for AP, right? And you do your best. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, there is. Could you please talk about a little bit about your future career path?
My future career path. Sure. I haven't. So I just finished my first year in medical school. I'm not entirely sure about what specialty I will be choosing. Currently, I'm pretty interested in surgery, but that's not the only thing I'm interested in. I'm also interested in cardiology. So and that's internal medicine. So again, if you ask me this question in 2 years, I'll probably be able to tell you more and have a more specific answer. But I would say in the first 2 years of medical school, it's good to keep your mind open about it, and definitely try your hands at different things, and don't try to limit yourself to one certain specialty too early. I think in the future, I definitely want to be able to practice both in the States as well as China. And I think I definitely need to specialize a lot to be able to do that. And we'll see how that goes. I really don't know what I'm going into again, because I'm just a second year medical student. So yeah, I'm sorry, I can't answer more. Any other
there is another question that what you did in high school activity so help your application university?
Oh, high school. So in terms of high schools, okay, so I think I talked about what I did for volunteering, right? So I did some work in the hospital, but that wasn't the main course of my volunteer work. I also did a lot of environmental work in terms of with the local conservancy, and then I also served as so the international club at my school. Again, I talked about that. That's a charity based club. So I helped fundraise a lot for the club, and I put on these big cultural shows to raise money also. So just a combination of these things. It doesn't necessarily need to be medically related. And I think I see another question. Um, are you planning to come back to Canada? Oh, I'm not a Canadian citizen. I'm a Chinese citizen. So yeah, so there is a huge. I know there's a huge difference between the medical career in the United States and Canada. Because I have one of my classmates is from Canada, and he's told me a lot about Canada and why he chose to come to the United States for medical school is because he thinks that so he wants to go into neurosurgery, which is like operating on the brain. And in Canada, there's very few opportunities to get that training, and in the United States, you have much more potential. So that's why he came here. And then another question I see now: do I feel safe to study in the States? I mean, yeah, you hear a lot recently, right, with all the action and the protests. I would say like for the most part, yes. Obviously there are certain areas of like whatever city you're in that you probably want to avoid. But just have a general sense of like vigilance when you're out there, and you should be able to protect yourself and stay safe. Um, okay, and then I think one more question I see is, uh, what do you think is the most important factor to my success?
Yeah.
And like and what advice I'm giving to high schoolers. So okay, so I think I talked about this again for specifically for the BSMD path. What you want to do is you want to show that you're committed, right? You want to show your matureness and that you're committed. I think that's honestly one of the most important things that the medical school wants to see out of you in that interview. And I would say for any high schoolers that are coming out, right, it's hard not to be a little bit uh, distraught by the pressure you feel during the interview, but try your best to stay composed and put on like a confident face, right? Because that's what they want to see. Okay, so not related to, okay, so this is,
See, maybe this is not related to this topic, but can you recommend something maybe that you can think of to architecture students? Oh my God, it's different.
I don't know about that. I'm sorry. I don't really know about architecture
Yeah.
studying at all. So, and then okay, so how do you keep balance between studying and other activities? Well, as I said, you just want to block off your times, right? You want to make sure you organize your day into like, 2 or 3 blocks. And then within that block, you're just doing whatever dedicated thing that you're doing, right? Whether it's for me, whether that's just studying medically related courses or business, or like maybe I'm just exercising, or maybe I'm just not doing anything and just taking a break, right? So but you just want to block off these periods so at any time of the day what you should be doing. The next question I see, what specialty in medicine is the most difficult to match? Currently the most competitive specialties are orthopedics, uh, ear, nose, throat, ENT, as well as probably dermatology, because so these specialties have really high income and relatively so orthopedics has a pretty intensive lifestyle, but dermatology and ENT have really easy lifestyles and you have high income. So that's why people like to do that. So the next question I see is, how do I find these volunteering activities in high school? So there's a lot of so you can always, so if you I'm not sure for Canada, but if you live in the States, you can always find them on your local county or local government's website. They'll have an option to for high school students that want to find what they call social service learning, I think SSL hours, that's what they call it. They'll have that on the website, and then you can reach out to the individual nonprofit organizations and to see if you're interested in participating. But there's definitely ways to find them on the local government's website. How do you improve your ability to speak on the spot? That actually, I think this has a lot to do. So in high school, I actually was part of the debate team. And I think, if you're afraid to speak publicly, that's one of the things that you can do is maybe try to, it might be hard at first. Again, I understand that. But join a debate team with a couple friends and just like treat it as like a sort of like pastime activity, and then maybe build your skills up from that regard. Let's see. So the next question, architects. Oh, so again, I'm not really sure about the I'm not really sure about the architects thing at all, and how it relates to MBA. Like if I told you something, I could be wrong, so I don't want to talk about it because I don't really know. Sorry. Let's see. So I think again, what's your most advantage to success? I think I already talked about that. It's like basically you just you want to stay. Yeah, you're right. So you mentioned self-discipline. Yes, that's very important. So you just want to, like I said, you block off your days in terms of chunks, like what you want to do in each chunk, right? So you want to stay focused, and then when you study, you study. When you take a break, you take a break, right? Don't mix and match. And you try to just do one thing at a time, because multitasking, it sounds good, but it doesn't really work in real life, right? You just want to be doing one thing at a time and do it well, right? So how do I relax normally? So I try to go on a run. I'm a big runner every day. I run about 5K, 5 kilometers every day, sometimes more. That's pretty relaxing for me. And then in other times, I also just listen to music, and I cook and I play games. Yeah, so it really depends on so to relax, I mean, there's not like a set formula for it, right? It's whatever you want to do, right? But just make sure you're really enjoying it. Is ophthalmologist difficult to match? Yes, it's pretty difficult to match. It's not one of the top specialties in terms of competitiveness, but the ophthalmology residency match has a special process where you have to apply really early. And so the difficulty in that is that the applicant has to make up his or her mind very much in advance, right? So you don't have as much time as other people to decide which specialties you want to go into. For ophthalmology, it's about half a year earlier that you have to decide. And that's the biggest thing, is the commitment, right? Again, you're committing early, so you got to decide early and have your materials ready early, right? And that's one of the more difficult things about ophthalmology. Any more questions?
They ask also I see, you can see, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I see one more, yeah. What is your current residency in the United States? Is that real? Oh, so okay, I guess this is asking about so as I've said, I'm still a Chinese citizen, so I am in medical school here on a student visa, right? Just like any other international student would be. So that's my residency status. And that wouldn't change until I finish medical school 3 years from now. So I'm still on a student visa.
There is one specialized difficult to match. I didn't know.
Ophthalmology, yeah. Yeah, I already answered that question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you always top student all the time since elementary school?
No, that would not be true. I wouldn't even say I'm a top student right now, in the program. There's always people that are better than you, and it doesn't really matter. You don't have to always be on top. As long as you're satisfied with your current position, I would say that's pretty good. You don't need to always strive to be the top, right? Because that can drive people crazy sometimes, and I don't want to do that. So and I haven't been a top student all the time. That's actually Yeah, that's not true. So is internship in 4 years medical school study or after 4 years study? So the internship, so you're talking about residency. Yeah, that's going to be after your 4 years of medical school. That will be after. So, and it ranges. So for internal medicine, it would be 3 years of internship, like you said, or residency. And for surgery, it can be up to 5, 6, or 7 years even, and it's a long time. So next question, how many universities did you apply to and how did you find these schools? Yeah, so I think I want to say I applied to less than 15 for undergraduate. So not as many as many of my peers. And to find them, I mean, you can, I think on the comment, if you're applying to US schools, I'm assuming you're applying to US schools. I don't know how the Canada system works. You would use the Common App system, right? And there's a search function on it. Or else, I think if you want to just want general recommendations, you can always go on College Confidential. I think it's a forum that people use a lot to ask for advice, as well as you can use your resources at your local school's advisor. They always know a lot about this. They would know a lot more than I do. Okay, so the next one is, did you think your Chinese education helped me a lot in studying in the USA? Yeah, definitely. So I think the Chinese public education is definitely very helpful in the sense that it establishes a very solid foundation in the sciences, and that's definitely helped me out a lot. But again, that's not all of education here, right? Here, it's also a lot about liberal arts. So, and that I think is where Chinese education might be a little bit lacking in, and that you have to develop your own interest for that. And you have to sometimes work a lot harder because the language, you have to learn the language first, right? If you're coming from China. So, okay, so what is, let's see, what is the ratio of domestic students to international students in my program? So if you're talking about the medical school in general, and we have a 200-person class, and I think there's about 3 or 4 international students, plus me. So I would say maximum 5 international students in the 200-person class, and that's a lot. For Tulane. Tulane is one of the schools that actually takes international students, so that's actually a lot. For many other medical schools, it won't be as much. If you're talking about my specific small program, none are in my program, just me. So all the other students are Americans. So is there a medical fellowship after residency program? Yes, absolutely. So depending on what specialty you're in, there'll always be fellowships, and they can range anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So let's say after you study cardiology, for example, in your residency program, you can go ahead and get an interventional cardiology fellowship, and that might take another 2 years or 3 years, depending on what program it is. So let's see. I think a lot of these, I'm just skipping the questions that are repeats again. I think I've answered a lot of these already. Okay, so let's see. Hobbies again, yeah. So I already talked about it. I think I run a lot. I play tennis, and it's definitely more difficult when you have like MD or MBA, like coursework at the same time. So you definitely want to find a way to relax and just find your own way to do that, right? It doesn't need to be the same for everybody. So let's see. How do I deal with the domestic and international ratio? I'm not sure what you're asking. I mean, as a US medical school, right, you're always going to have an overwhelming number of domestic students. I mean, that's just the reality, right? So there's never going to be a day where there's more international students than domestic students in medical school. So I mean, you just try your best to connect with everybody, and they don't, most of the time they won't see you as an outsider if you're, especially since I basically went through high school as well as undergraduate here. So they don't really see me as an outsider, if that's what you're asking about. What were some of my major achievements in high school? Are you talking about awards that I've gotten? I don't think I've gotten any national awards per se in high school. I did do some leadership, as I've said, in high school for clubs. So again, the biggest club is called the International Club, and I was the secretary for that, and I also organized cultural shows. But I've never had a national level award. But if you do, that's good. That's good for you. Let's see. Let's see. Can you use 3 words to describe your personality? Okay, that's a little difficult. Let's see. I would say I'm pretty easygoing, pretty funny, and pretty studious. Yeah. So I would say those 3. What will you say regarding your main characters that have contributed to today's success? I think I already talked about that. I think many times. It's mostly, again, I think it's just about self-discipline and about showing your like readiness for the program, right? So I've talked about that a couple times. Okay. Any other questions?
I think, there is some.
Oh, okay. So how did my parents influence me? Yeah, so I'm really grateful for my parents. They were great influences. So they're both really hard workers. So their work ethics like very much inspired me. And then also, like, my mother used to work in the private sector as a business manager. So she very much encouraged me to explore the MBA aspect of the program. And I think that was very good advice. And throughout the entire application process, they were always very supportive, and yeah, they're a great influence. Can I explain a little bit about my Zoom background? Oh yeah. Yeah, so this is what you see here is actually a bone in your body. So it's called the scapula, or most people call it the shoulder blades, right? So it's basically right here. You have 2 of them, right? One on the left, one on the right, and they basically help you coordinate the muscles of your shoulder as well as the muscles of your back, right? And then the red lines are where the blood vessels would run. And once you're in medical school, you'll have to learn where what each and single one of them are called and how they continue running throughout the body. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting picture. Any other questions that we have from the audience?
Okay, I think today almost finish the time，因为今天呢就差不多是已经要结束了的时间，因为本来是9点钟就应该结束，但是呢一迟呢又给我们多讲了将近半个小时。我们呢今天也非常感谢他能来到这里跟大家分享。当然呢，如果大家有任何问题呢，也在我们的教育群里呢也可以进行一些就是说问题的就是提问。这样的话呢，如果我能回答，我能尽量回答。有些东西我也可以问一次，但是我们非常感谢哈，不管怎么样，一次能够呢用自己的时间给大家分享。而且我们也知道，一直也是一个非常优秀的学生，毕竟呢，就是能够进这种 program， 又能呢，就是说同时读这个 MBA 和这个 MD 的 program。而且大家刚才我也已经解释了，用中文，就是说其实是非常难被录取的，因为它都是单个数，不超过2位数的录取每一年，基本上，而且对于我们 international student 呢是更加 challenge， 是因为它每一年呢只能录取可能不到1个，有的甚至没有。因为我女儿当时也申请了6个北医联读的学校，只有4个有面试，最后被2个录取，所以我们是知道是非常非常难的，无论是对加拿大学生还对中国的孩子。所以呢，我们作为这个 international student 和这个 Dominican 的，就是说本土的学生还是有很大的区别。但是不管怎么样，我们还是在这里呢，给呢就是所有的孩子呢以鼓励，就是说 任何一条路，任何一条大学，任何一个大学都是你梦想开始的地方。无论走到什么时候，只要你有梦想，只要想当医生，只要想学这个 MBA，你总有一天会走到这条路，不管是通过什么样的途径。所以呢，因为大家也看了哈，说有什么链接，这个链接呢，可能就是说一会儿群里可能会给你一个链接。我觉得就是我们有后台的服务，我们再次感谢这个爱维教育呢，给我们提供这个平台。然后呢，以后因为我们每个星期都有学生来分享，所以我希望下个星期这个时间呢，就8点钟还和大家在 Zoom 见面。好，谢谢你一慈。
Thank you, Dr. Jin. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.